friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a card for you guys using the adorable Nuts About You stamp set from Reverse Confetti. I'll also be using the flower from Bear Hugs and the Under the Umbrella 6x6 pattern paper pad. I've stamped my images on some Copic friendly cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink so I can color with my Copic markers. The first image that I'm going to work on is the squirrel, and I'm going to break him up into 3 different sections. I find that when I'm coloring a larger image like he is, it's a lot easier to get a good blend if you kind of break it down and don't let the ink saturate into the paper too much before it blends. You want to keep it nice and wet. So I'm starting with that E77 laying in the shadows, then I'm blending out with the E74 and finishing with the E71. Then I'm going to color his little belly, and I'll use the E71 as my darkest and blend upward with the E70, so that'll keep it nice and light so there's a little bit of contrast there. Then I'll color in his tail, and I'm again starting with that E77. I put a nice deep shadow there because I want his tail to look really nice and curved underneath and fluffy, so I want there to be a lot of contrast. So I'm going to use all 4 shades, just blending darkest to lightest towards the top and then finishing with that E70 as the highlight, since that's the area I want it to look like the sun is hitting. The last section for him is his head, and I'm just going to add a little shadow again with that E77 on his ears and the back of his head. And then I'm blending forward with the E74. Next is the E71, and I'm going to just make sure that I'm catching the edge of the previous color so that I get that nice smooth blend. And then I'll save the center portion of his face for the E70, which is the lightest, so it has a nice highlight. I'll finish up his ears, and then I'll add in the E79 for his nose. I'm going to do just a little bit of shadow towards the inside, shading in the same direction as I did the rest of his body, and then blend that out with the E77. Next I'm going to color in the hedgehog, and for him I'm using E40, E41, E44, E47, and E49, and I'm going to start with his little spikes, and I'm going to color darkest to lightest from the bottom. So I'm starting with that E49 and shading upward. And if you're wondering why I'm doing the shadows differently on these images, they are actually going on 2 separate cards. I'm making 2 cards today. So I blended upward with that E47, and now moving on to the E44, and I'm going to take that one up almost to the top. I'm going to leave a little bit of space for that E41 as my highlight. I'm just using the darkest 4 shades on his spikes. So I'll finish off with that E41. And there is quite a bit of difference between the E41 and the E44, so I'm going to actually end up bringing in that E44 and doing a little bit of tip-to-tip action. I'm going to pick up a little color from that E44 marker with the E41 and then just go over that area once again and blend it nice and smooth. For his face, I started with the E41, and I also colored his legs with that color, and then I'm blending out with the E40. And then I'm going to do that tip-to-tip action one more time and just darken up the shadows. I didn't want to go quite as dark as the E44, but just adding a little bit of that in there is going to give me a nice contrast. And then I used the E47 to color in his nose. So after that, I actually found my E43 marker. I had accidentally put it away with the E30s, so I will use that to save myself some time with the combination for the little acorn caps. So I'm still using that E47, E44, but now instead of doing that tip-to-tip action to blend it out, I'll use the E43. But it's nice to know that that option is available if you're missing a marker in a sequence. For the actual nut of the acorn, I'm going to color those in with YG61, YG63, NYG67, and there's two reasons I picked to do greens instead of a traditional brown, and that is because number one, I wanted this to be a springtime card, not a fall card, so I thought having unripe acorns would make more sense, and secondly, it's going to enable me to add another pop of color onto the card instead of everything just being browns. So I'm also going to color in the leaves with that same combination, and I'm just going darkest to lightest. From the leaves, I'm doing it from the branch towards the tip, darkest to lightest, and for the nuts, I just did it in the way that I knew that I would be stacking them on the card. For the tree, I'm going back to my E74 and E71 that I used on the squirrel, and that is because I wanted to have the same color palette on both cards. For the flowers, I'm using R81, R83, and R85, and I'm starting with the R83 and doing a little shading around the center of the flowers. Then I will blend out the rest of those petals with the R81, so they'll have a highlight on the tips of the petals. And then I'm actually going to use the R85 to color in all of the centers. Just a real quick little dot there. And then I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. For the focal panels, I die cut 2 pieces of pale blue cardstock with the Reverse Confetti scalloped squares, and then I used some post-it tape to tape the frame on because I wanted to use it as one piece. Then I also die cut 1 out of green and cut it twice with the grassy border in the Nuts About You stamp set, and I taped those together too so that I could use those as the grass for the bottom of my scene. So I'm going to take a little liquid glue and just glue those into place, and then I'll pop them into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiments. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Jalapeno ink to stamp out the Thanks a Bunch sentiment on this first one, and I'm going to stamp that down twice to get a really good impression. And on this second one, I will stamp the Nuts About You sentiment, and both of these are from that Nuts About You stamp set. While I have my MISTI out, I'm going to also stamp the insides of my cards, and I'm using Lawn Fawn's Merman ink, and I'm using the tree stump and the For a Special Friend sentiment, and I'm going to do the same on both cards. So I'm going to be using the monthly Sketch for You to Try over at the Reverse Confetti blog. So I've got my pattern papers picked out and I just need to trim them down. So I'm going to stack those together in my paper trimmer and then line them up in the little groove, and then I will cut them together at the same time from one corner to the other so that they're going to match up perfectly. I'll adhere those down to my card bases with a little liquid glue, and I'm going to leave a border along the two sides so that that pale blue cardstock can show through to match the sketch. So I'm going to adhere one of these in the reverse order of the other just for a little variation. So on one I've got the floral print down at the bottom, on the other one I've got it up at the top. But I'm just bringing those together in the center and making sure they line up very nicely, and then smoothing everything down along the edges. So I've added some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back of both focal panels, and I'm going to line those up a little bit high of center on both of those cards. Just peeling off the backer sheets and then kind of using the print as a guideline. That leaf print has rows, so it's really easy to line up. Now I'm going to add my images. I'm going to start with the hedgehog and tuck her into the grass line on the card that says thanks a bunch. Then I'm going to grab the branch and add some liquid glue to the back of that as well. And I'm going to stand it up so it looks like a tree. And again, just tucking that back behind the grass line. I'm going to move to the other card. I like to start with the main images first and then do the little accessories later. So I'm going to add the squirrel to the card that says Nuts About You. Again, just tucking her back behind that grass line. And then I'm going to add the 3 acorns, and I'm just going to create a little pile with those over on the far right of that card. So I'll add the largest one down at the bottom, And then I'll have the middle size kind of helping hold up that third acorn, which is another large one. Just thought it would be fun to have a little variation in sizes with those. Then I'm going to grab the flowers. I'm going to add 2 of them to the tree just to kind of make it look a little more spring-like. This will be like a little flowering tree. And then the third one I'm going to add to the hedgehog, like right behind her ear, right in front of her ear, like it's tucked there. And then the last one I'm going to add to the squirrel. And I probably should have stopped there, but I decided to brighten up the eyes with my Jelly Roll glaze pen. I've had problems with this pen in the past, and apparently I didn't learn my lesson because it bled on me again. So that went immediately in the trash, and I tried to fix that with some black enamel dots. Unfortunately, the dot also came out a little bit too big, and I really wasn't happy with how it turned out. So I really didn't know what to do at this point. I had to let the enamel dots dry anyway because, those take maybe, a couple hours to dry. You don't want to add anything on top of that or it might like squish out. Plus, I didn't have anything, so I really had to think about what to do. I ended up going to the store the next day and buying some googly eyes. So normally I'm not a huge fan of googly eyes on cards, but I thought in this case it would definitely save the card. I didn't want to waste them at this point after all that work. So I decided to add those with a Little Ranger multimedia mat. And then I just picked those up with my pick-me-up tool. And I want to thank Barb, my friend Barb, who sent me the back end to replace the one that I was missing, so I'm able to use my pick-me-up tool again. So I added those googly eyes right over top and then just let those dry, and that is going to complete the card. So tell me what you would have done in this situation, if you would have used the googly eyes or, just left them as they were. In the end, I think they turned out pretty cute, so sometimes mistakes can be a blessing. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can also hit the notification bell if you want to make sure that my videos always end up in your feed. Here's 2 extra videos you may also enjoy, so hopefully those will tide you over until my next one. Until then, I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.